Why do I get nervous when I try to take this a little bit seriously? Hello and welcome. My name is Kyle, and I am your host to Falcon Wins Hobbies. That actually rolled off the tongue a little bit easier this time. In today's video, we're not working on the truck. Sorry, I got some planning and figuring I got to do, and none of that. There's only about 15 of you who are actually interested. Anyway, today's topic, and it's something I feel kind of passionate about. In the area I'm living in the United States, Texas, East Texas, doesn't matter. Anyway, uh, high school graduation is upon us. Uh, there's a few schools in my area, and they kind of stagger graduation a couple of weeks apart, just so that way, because you have family on this side of town, family on this side of town, and this side of the county, two counties over. So they try to stagger it to where everybody can be involved in everybody's graduations and whatnot. Uh, but a recent grad, if he's anything like myself, God, I hope not, I feel sorry for you, is an overthinker, refused to ask for help, and his idea of college fell through. So what are you going to do now? Well, got to support yourself somehow, so you're going to go out and find a job. What type of job is that? Depends on what your preferred skill set is. For somebody like me who grew up in a construction environment, I went with ever since I was about 6 years old and could swing a hammer during summer vacation from schools and whatnot. My grandpa would take me and my brothers and cousins and whatnot, and we would go build houses or work on houses. And then after, it only took me until I was about 20 to realize that he was really abusing child labor laws. Anyway, hardest $5 I ever made a week. But it also goes to show when you're a little kid, you also tear more stuff up than you actually fix. But a lot of it was learning experience, getting that later. But I grew up in a construction environment. So I am familiar with tools and certain amount of work ethic, and hence why my project is this behind me, because I like working on things. It's been ingrained in me since I was a child. I've been brainwashed in the worst possible way possible. Redundancy. You're saying too many words, too many of the same. It doesn't matter. So, to those of you recent grads entering the workforce, even if you're graduating college and still don't know exactly where you're going, may I introduce you into the world of industrial maintenance? That is actually currently what my job description kind of is. I work in power generation. I have worked from the lowliest spot up to the highest labor involved spot without going into management. I have worked from basically shoveling coal onto conveyor belts all the way up to I'm the guy who pushes buttons to make electricity go on the lines and yada yada yada. Oversimplification, but that's what I'm in. And a lot of that has to do with my family's. I actually lucked out in that aspect. I will be forward about that. Is because my grandpa. Let's take it a step back and go into a joke. My grandpa built the power plants. My dad maintained the power plants. I get to shut them down. That's the joke I tell people anyway, because actually there for about 5, 6 years, that's kind of what I was doing. I was actually shutting down or operating the power plants to shut down. But yes, I got into power plants thanks to my family. So it was easier for me to get a step in, get my foot into the door. I still had to make a name for myself because your family reputation can only get you so far. There was some word of mouth. I got hired in. I initially went into the power industry to be a welder, to work all these outages, make seasonal money, yada, yada, yada. With the way the job market is and the power industry and the maintenance schedules and whatnot, you really can't make money doing that now. So I highly recommend getting into a full-time position working for said generator instead of working as a contractor. And this is a lot of rambling on that nobody is going to want to watch. Kyle, get to the point. To the recent high school graduates and college graduates who may be entering the workforce, and maybe you're one of these guys, college ain't for you, or you want to work some seasonal work before you go to college, or even after graduating college, you don't know exactly what to do with your degree, but you need some field experience, say you did some sort of mechanical or fluid dynamic type engineering, but you want a little bit of field experience. Please tell me you're going to get field experience and not go straight into the office after getting your engineering degree. Please get some field experience. I have a little bit of wisdom to share, and that is tool bucket, the almighty tool bucket. And I have some pointers if you are working, if you end up stepping foot into an industrial facility. And by industrial facility, I am talking in regards to oil refineries and power plants, mostly because that's what I'm familiar with. I'm more familiar with power plants than I am oil refineries, but I do have some family that work in oil refineries, and some of it does translate over. Now, that being said, everything I'm going over may vary given your region, given union agreements, given labor agreements, and some politicking and whatnot involved. But this is just a general purpose, general maintenance, industrial toolkit. So let's get right on to it. Tool bucket. Now this one doesn't have a lid because honestly, for a lot of things I do, if I need a bucket, I really don't need a lid, but having a lid would be convenient in what I'm fixing to tell you. If you are just now starting out in an industrial maintenance position, you're not going to be turning wrenches. Plain and simple. Because sometimes they just need people there to fill positions. And one of those positions, which is actually really important, but they always stick the new guy on it, so I'll go over that briefly. You may be tasked with, what's the politically correct or OSHA term now? Confined space attendant. And I'm not going to go into the whole scenario of a confined space, the safety regulations, yada, yada, yada. You're going to be stuck sitting on a bucket signing people in and out of a hole. You are a hole watch. That is the generic term used in the industry. Because let's face it, this is blue collar work. We don't care for political correctness or what offense anybody might take to the term hole watch, because somebody got upset about it. So they try to rephrase it as confined space attendant, but I digress. The best tool in your arsenal when you get started is actually the bucket itself. And what you would do is put a lid on it, put a cushion on it, because that's where you're going to sit for 11 and a half hours out of a 12-hour day. Unless you work for a company that's nice enough to actually give you a little bit of reprieve and rotate the guy who's actually sitting on the bucket and signing people in and out of confined spaces. It is something I have had the displeasure of doing myself. You would sit in front of an access door, sign people in, write down what time they went in, and you write down what time they come out. We were doing inspections on our big fans at one point, and of course, being the young guy, they sat me on a bucket, and that was my job. Sign people in, sign people out. You have a radio, so that way you can be in communication with your supervisor in case anything happens. I guess I will dive into the safety aspect of it a little bit. Because when you're a confined space attendant, your responsibility is to monitor the conditions of said confined space. Now, as a new guy, if they have you doing a confined space attendant job or a hole watch job, Usually it's a uh, it's still a permit required confined space, but you don't have to have continuous air monitoring. There's certain aspects of it that go into a whole confined space. But you're not going to be over there with a confined space air monitor taking readings every 15 minutes on whatever one. Most of the time, I'm not going to say every time, but most of the time, as a new guy, all you're doing is signing people in and out. And you're going to be bored because the guys are going to be in there doing their inspection, doing their grinding, doing their welding, doing whatever maintenance needs to be done in said confined space. And the only thing you can do is sit outside with your radio just in case anything happens, because you got to get in communication with your supervisor. Supervisor then gets in control into communication with whatever rescue team is on site in case things get out of control. But that will be covered in your site specifics for whatever contract group or company you are working for. So have a bucket with a lid with a cushion. As far as what to put in the bucket, maybe a little bit of reading material with a notebook and a pen, because you don't want to be caught on your phone with your headphones in listening to music or watching videos, because that's a great way to get fired. I'll just say that out loud. That is a great way to get fired if you're a whole watch attendant and you're over there watching videos. At least with physical literature, your ears are always attuned to anything that could be happening, because you do have to maintain communication with the people on the inside of the hole. And I think that'll cover that aspect of it. But yes, the bucket is your almighty friend in this instance. But what if you don't want to be just a dedicated hole watch attendant for the next 5 years? Well, I suggest you start by purchasing tools or acquiring tools. Not stealing. That's a totally different thing. Don't steal tools, please. You are going to want to acquire your own set of tools. And if you want to leg up, your bucket that you're going to carry with you onto your first job site is going to have some tools in it. And I'm going to share with you the basic tools that I found to be commonplace on most all power plants I have been on. And again, I'm a jack of all trades, and I deal more with the maintenance aspect of things because I like turning wrenches. But depending on what job you are going into, your toolkit may vary, and I'll go over those in a little bit. And my God, it is hot in here. Now, took everything out of the bucket, laid it down. This all fit in the bucket. You saw me take everything out, except for the pipe wrench, but the pipe wrench does fit in there. It's just, I'll stick things back in the bucket so that way you'll believe me. I was lucky in the aspect that because I'm a third generation power plant worker, my dad and my grandfather have acquired a lot of tools throughout their career. And actually, even now, I still have tools I'm going through that my grandpa gave me about a year before he passed. And one of the things I was tasked with was to put together a toolkit for each of my brothers. But they also work in a completely different field, so a lot of the tools I have to make a toolkit out of don't apply to their industry, but it is nice to have these tools on hand, because a lot of these tools you see in front of you are what you're going to need as a home gamer working on a project vehicle in your own on the spot. That being said, let's go through some of what I have. And we'll start out with the most basic of basic things. This here is all the basic that you would need. Got safety glasses, because believe it or not, finding a comfortable pair of safety glasses is important because you're required to wear them at all times. I have clear and I have dark. Dark are for when I'm working outdoors in the sun because I have sensitive eyes and I really hate doing the Clint Eastwood squint everywhere I go. And I also have clear safety glasses from when you're working indoors. And indoors is a misnomer because almost everything I have done has been exposed outside. It's just when everything's catwalks and stacks and boilers and piping and whatnot, there's very little sunlight to get to you in some of these areas. But clear safety glasses, dark safety glasses. I've also gotten not as picky about my safety glasses, but that's also because I work in the control room now, so I'm not required to wear them at all times. Next, and this is actually kind of ironic, working in a power plant, one thing you should always have on you, besides a way of communicating with your superiors, is a flashlight. And this here is my personal flashlight. I bought it. It is considered intrinsically safe. It's MSHA rated, yada, yada, yada. It is just a basic stream light. One button. It doesn't have the strobe feature on it, which I'm glad it doesn't, because usually that button breaks and it always strobes all the time when you don't want it to. And I mark it with blue tape because that's kind of the color I like. But it also differentiates it between everybody else's flashlights. Make sure you have a place to charge it, or at least have rechargeable batteries or available to you. You're going to take them to your hotel room if you're working outages, or you have it at the house. Or if you're special enough and you have a locker with a electrical outlet on it, you would plug in your batteries there. And I'm just going left to right. There's no really big order of importance here. Pry bars. Pry bars are another handy tool, obviously for leverage gathering purposes, because who was it? Plato? Anyway, doesn't matter. If you have a big enough pry bar, you can move the world. And that is a... it's one of the funniest things. And also, I'll go ahead and backtrack and sidetrack just a little bit. Everything you see here can be bought relatively cheap, or in my case, inherited. In your case, you may want to go to garage sales. Or if you're just starting out in the field and you just only have your bucket, talk to the old timers on your job site to see what tools they wouldn't mind parting with, for $20 or $100 or things like that. Because believe it or not, the old timers will help out new guys if you're serious about entering the trades. So, try to get your tools as cheap as possible. One, used tools do not disappear near as fast as shiny tools. Shiny tools get stolen. Name brand tools get stolen. So go to a pawn shop, go to garage sales, talk to the old timers at your job site. They may help you out. You don't want to buy a whole bunch of Snap-on tools. One, because you're not a car mechanic, which Snap-on does make good tools. They also make industrial tools too. But rein it in, Kyle. Shiny tools get stolen. I'm just going to leave it at that for now. But also, you're going to learn a couple of things not to be cheap on, which brings me to pry bars. Don't be cheap on pry bars, because they will bend and they will break, and they create more hazards than what you were initially trying to deal with. Because I've seen, we had one here not too long ago, bought it brand new from a vendor that we're affiliated with. Brand new pry bar. I want to say it was like a 3-foot piece. This is probably more than 3 foot. Anyway, it was probably about a 3-foot pry bar, and it turned into a banana. So certain things you don't need to cheap out on, but you will learn that as you go along. You will also pick up pointers, especially listening to the old timers or the more experienced folks, about what tools you might need. Again, this is just basic entry-level industrial mechanic application. I say industrial mechanic. If you have a small selection of tools, the faster you get off the bucket and stop doing hole watch work, and you may be a helper for an electrician. And a helper for an electrician is nothing but an overglorified conduit runner. And the tool they're going to want you to have in your back pocket when you're running conduit is a level. Reason why I know that is I wasn't an electrician's helper, I wasn't running conduit, but I work with one, and that is his biggest stickler is about conduit not being level. Next, just because you may not know what you're working on, basic flathead, basic Phillips screwdriver. And again, the dirtier, the grungier, the better, because they're less likely to work away. It's even better if they're not even a matching set like these. Now, wrenches. Wrenches and sockets. I have a couple of things I want to address. As you can see, this is a mixed set. I did that on purpose. Even though I pulled these out of the toolbox, I have a couple of mixed sets. Like this one here is a Proto, a high-end name brand wrench, but you can see it's been well used. It has a couple of different serial numbers stamped on it because it's went from a couple of different individuals. That's one that my grandpa gave me. This one here I think is like a Williams, which is another good brand, but it's been abused. It's been left to weather. You can see it was probably part of a package deal because there's still duct tape residue on it. It's not likely to walk off on it. That, and I have some gear wrench and Cobalt stuff here. I think this one's just a pure Chinese, no brand 7/8 wrench here. Now, as far as wrenches and sockets, you need to build up a set from, in my opinion, this is what I have experienced and things that I've talked to my dad about before. In fact, I even talked to him about my idea of doing this video, was to build a set of wrenches, open end, box end wrenches. No need to get fancy with a double box end, double open end, shorties, stubbies, long extended wrenches. Go to a pawn shop, go to a garage sale, talk to the old timers because they may have extras they wouldn't mind selling you. But build you a set of wrenches from 1/2 inch in every nominal size up to either 1 1/8 or 1 1/4. Because those are going to be your most common sizes you will encounter given my experience. I'm not going to say your experience is going to be exactly the same. In my experience, those are the most common sizes you will run into. And actually, if you want to narrow it down even further, you would get a 3/4, a 15/16, and an 1 1/8. But if you only have those three, you're going to be stuck working on something where those 3 wrenches are not going to be applicable. So ideally, 1/2 inch to an 1 1/4. I don't have it here with me. I could try to use something like that, but I don't want to mess up that nice round rod. Is find you a piece of TIG welding wire and build you a nice little loop. Loop all your wrenches together so that way they're all nice together in a set. I may have to go out to my job site and take a short snippet of some of the things I have in my box out there, but that may be for a later video. But open end, box end wrenches, 1/2 inch to an 1 1/8. Sockets. I'm picky about sockets and ratchets for some reason. When it comes to sockets, if I'm carrying them with me, they all have to be from the same set. That is OCD type thing for me, but it doesn't matter. But in this case, I have them on a rack. This one is all the way from 3/8 up to 1 1/4. I have one ratchet. Another thing you'll learn is sometimes it's better to get expensive on your ratchets because you want one that fits in your hand pretty well. You want one that's comfortable. But for the time being, a cheap ratchet would work. A couple extensions because you're going to have to do some reach work with it. But wrenches, sockets, 1/2 inch to 1 1/8, comfortable size ratchet with a couple of extensions, and that'll get you through the majority of all the work you need to do. Now, moving on. Move this to the side so that way they're not obstructing the view completely. Crescent wrenches. man's good friend. And I have two different styles in front of the camera right now. And that is for a good reason. One, I love this spud style crescent wrench. And again, kind of like pry bars, a spud wrench or an alignment tool is not something you want to go cheap on because they will bend when you don't need them to. So I will say this may be a later purchase, but it's very handy to have in your arsenal, especially if you get stuck working on, say, aligning pipe flanges or actually move into iron working and you need to align your bolt holes on your structural iron. That's usually what this wrench is designed for. But saying that, a crescent wrench is a good tool to leave in your back pocket, especially for me because I work more on the operation side than the maintenance side. When I'm out in the field or was out in the field as a field operator or auxiliary operator or there's so many different names for it. People can't, the industry as a whole can't decide on the proper title. Like even when I was in Tennessee, a control room operator was just called a unit operator. And then your outside operator was called an auxiliary unit operator. So it's, or assistant unit, anyway. But a crescent wrench is handy to have, especially in the field, because let's face it, sometimes it's easier to carry this to tighten up a nut or a bolt than it is to carry your full set of wrenches. And sometimes you may go out there and even though this is a, what is this, 10 inch, 12 inch? Does it say? 12 inch, okay. Even though this is a 12-inch crescent, I don't think it opens up to, oh, it does. Okay. Yeah, 12-inch crescent opens up, proper crescent brand, opens up to a 1 1/8 inch. So that'll get you pretty far in that regard. Another handy tool to have, 12-inch pipe wrench. It doesn't have to be a name brand rigid like this, just a 12-inch pipe wrench because you may be stuck with pipe fitters for one outage. Or your job for the next 2 days is to undo a grease nipple that somebody has stripped out and come to find out it's not built the way you needed it, but you need the extra leverage. And as the name implies, a pipe wrench is for working and threading pipe together. And not only that, it also comes in handy back to the operation side where sometimes we need to build little air fittings, pipe wrench, and a pair of channel locks come in handy. But these are your multi-purpose tools. They come in handy. Sometimes you need an extra set of hands, pair of vice grips. And last but not least, another one that seems to be used more than I care to admit is a hammer. There are a lot of times where you have to beat things into place because it's old, dilapidated, lack of maintenance. Whatever the reason may be, sometimes it just needs a little love tap on it just to get it into the right spot. And I don't recommend, I'm not going to say go out and buy brass punches, but a soft punch is preferable over a hard punch. Just so that way you're not marring up threads or alignment jigs or things of that nature. Usually having a soft punch is more recommended. But a decent sized hammer, I think this one is a, I think got the stamping on it. This is a 1.5 pounds. Yeah. But a 1.5 pounds ball peen hammer. You can get you through, this entire kit here will get you through a job site. And I'll bring one more thing up to the table just to say, yes, you can have it. But again, this topic is more along the lines of for general maintenance, people getting into the industry, not knowing exactly where they're going to end up being at within said industry. But this set of tools will get you started. And they'll get you started pretty well. Another handy thing about it being a bucket, which also depends on how far away the parking lot is, I will say that. Another thing about it being a bucket, you don't have to leave it on site unattended unless you make friends with a old timer who will let you lock it in his job box. Which, again, make friends with the old timers. They will definitely help you out. In there, get in there. And there's your work bucket. It will be heavy if you have to carry it back and forth to your vehicle. That's the reason why I emphasize the fact that it might be a good idea to make friends with old timers, because they'll help keep you safe. They'll help guide you in the right direction. They will make fun of you the entire time you're doing it, but they mean it with love. If they're not fucking with you, they don't care about you. That is just straight up fact coming from the blue collar world. If they're not screwing with you, making fun of you, they don't particularly care for you. But that is your handy dandy work bucket, and that will get you through most of the work. I might bring in, if this video does pretty well and there might be interest in it, I might start bringing in some, I'm not going to say specialty tools, but other tools that may be handy, because I have a lot in my box at work. And actually, to be honest, there's a lot of tools I don't use, but maybe once or twice a year too. But sometimes it's nice having that one particular tool. Set that one over there. But let's look at your basic mechanic toolkit. And I bring this up because it is a simple, easy way to get a lot of tools you need to get started in maintenance work. This is one of my, not to divert from the topic at hand, this is one of my safety blanket toolkits. I believe everybody should have a simple toolkit similar to this. Actually, this ain't even my favorite one. My favorite one's actually in my car. This is the one I keep in my pickup truck. In fact, I'll go ahead and get the one I keep in my car. I think I can move this out of the way now. Why does my face itch? All right. Do I got both of those in frame? Not quite. All right. So, as you can see, these are your nice standard, what is this one, 126 piece? 135 piece. 135, 140, yada, yada, yada. Standard metric combo mechanic toolkits. Now, they're not going to have everything I just listed for the bucket. Obviously, there's no hammer in it. It doesn't go up to 1 1/8 inches. In fact, I think the biggest standard size here is 7/8. Again, this is one of those things that can get you started on a job, but it may not have everything you need to do the job. But for in an industrial environment, working on cars or whatnot, yeah, these sets here are great. In fact, I use these quite a bit actually. But one thing I found in handy, given the location I'm at right now, is having the metric sizes available. Because every now and then, you'll run into a system that was built and designed in Europe and then adapted over here in the States. So you may need metric hardware. May. It all depends. Crescent wrench and a pair of channel locks can get you far as well. But I have found these make handy tools, and excuse me, and given the carry handle on them makes it appropriate. You can actually have this on site. Not saying it won't get stolen, but it's less likely for things to end up missing out of it, and I do not have a key for that. Why do I have locks I don't have keys to anymore? Anyway, but to kind of illustrate a point, you can tell my brain is a mess. I should have the key to this one. 41, that's going to be this one? Nope. It's going to be this one. Nope. This one. Nope. That's for a different style lock. This one? Nope. I know it ain't that one. Those two must be for work. Yep. Anyway, because I don't know where the key is to one of my locks. This ain't the right type of lock. It might just work, just barely. It's just wide enough. But it's an extended shank. And you would be able, should be able, to lock the handle on your said toolkit. And again, that'd be a nice one to have just in case. If you want to go out and just spend $100-something bucks on this rather than slowly building your collection over time. But I believe this one here will give you a good start as well. But you'd be able to put a lock on it. You might be able to put it in an old-timer's box instead of carrying it back and forth with you to your car every day whenever you're on the job site. But these are just some options that I believe I should share with you to give people some, what's the phrase I'm looking for? To give individuals an idea of what to expect or what they should. I hate the idea of saying you have to have this or you should have this. And because every job site's different. Every union agreement's different. Where I'm at in Texas, this is perfectly acceptable because we don't have Boilermaker unions prevalent at every site. We don't have electrical unions prevalent at every site. In fact, the contractors that come in are non-union, while company employees may be union. Depends on the job site you go to, the power plant you go to. Where I was at in Arizona, you couldn't, as an operator, the way I was trained, if something was low on oil, you added oil. When I was in Arizona, the Boilermaker union was heavy over there. And they were very strict too. An operator doesn't touch the oil. You have to put in a work order for a mechanic to put oil in a system. So you have certain things going on there. But it depends on your location. If you know somebody affiliated with a union you may be interested in, you may want to reach out to them. I'm not going to tell you how to go about your job hunt, but I will say this. Your first day there, one of the things you should ask is, what tools should I have? And they're probably going to point you to a lot of what I listed. You can also look up tool list online for certain trades, but it also depends on what region you're at, because there was actually one I looked up not too long ago for millwrights just to get an idea, and I think their tool list was actually kind of lacking in my opinion. But I'm also one, I'd rather be over prepared for a job than not have the tools necessary. But I think that's how we'll close out this segment. If, like I said, if this video gets popular or you might be interested in more topics related to industrial maintenance, leave a comment down below. But for the time being, I'm fixing to shut up, turn on a fan, and get some air moving because it is hot in this shop right now. And again, thanks for watching Grafalconwood's Hobbies. Like, comment, share. If you learned something, let me know. If you think I'm blowing smoke up your ass, let me know. These types of things go either way. Maybe next video, I might have a concrete idea on what I'm doing with the truck, and I may explain what my next steps are in that regard. So, see you later.